Isn't she lovely? Isn't she lesbian? Oh, she is that. 17th century peasants hate her. What's her secret? Another slow burn Sapphic romance involving a witch. Nature is healing. Lesbians are healing. Hi guys, welcome to a video, and in today's video, I'm just going to be reviewing the book Bitterthorn. The inside's very nice, as you can see. It has nice insides. There's nice book cover. I want it to be my wife. I was so excited to read this book because I'd heard such good things about it. And I was also curious to see if it was going to live up to the hype. And now that I've read it, I can let you know my thoughts. Just you and you alone. This video will contain spoilers, so you have been warned. If you're not familiar with Bitterthorn, it's a Sapphic Gothic romance about a duke's daughter who offers herself up to a monstrous witch. God, I wish that were me. I'll just tell you right away, the best thing about this book is the writing. I can't tell you how refreshing it is to pick up a book and be pleasantly surprised by the writing instead of frustrated or disappointed, which I have been with the past couple of Sapphic books I've read. Big Swiss. Kat Dunn's prose is poetic, descriptive, and profound. She really pays attention to detail, and it makes for a rich and thought-provoking reading experience. Dunn also does a fantastic job of consuming the reader in a gloomy and stifling atmosphere, which complements the gothic elements of Bitterthorn perfectly. Grief, loneliness, and otherness are huge themes in this book right from the beginning, and it explores these in great detail through the character of Mina. Mina is very self-deprecating and cloistered as a person. When we're introduced to her, she's really navigating grief and depression, and Dunn really invites you in to her despair. And she holds you there until you feel that same sense of suffocation. I will say, Mina's self-pitying attitude did start to grate on me after a while because you're beaten over the head so much with it at the beginning. The consistent self-pity and woe is me attitude does start to wear a bit thin. But as the story progresses, there is character development and we are allowed to move past that. Thank you. Of course, Bitterthorn very much draws inspiration from fairy tales. Most obviously Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, and Beauty and the Beast. But Dunn also mentions the titles of classic literary works in the novel as well, such as The Sorrows of Young Werther, Carmilla, and The Woman in White, which all, again, quite obviously have had an influence on her work, and were mentioned as fun or informative nods to the narrative, characters, locations, and just general atmosphere that she was creating in Bitterthorn. That said, Bitterthorn does hold its own as its own piece despite all of the very obvious influences. And this is possibly because A, it's crafted through a female lens, and a lot of those works, not all, but most of those works were created from a male one, and B, it's a Sapphic romance, which gives it a fresher perspective and feeling to these stories and themes we're already acquainted with. And despite being familiar with the setup of Bitterthorn, I didn't feel at any point like I'd read this book before. So Kat Dunn created Bitterthorn in the period after her mother's death. So themes of loneliness and alienation in the book may stem solely from that experience. However, those themes are also often attributed to lesbianism and lesbian experience, which I thought was interesting given that this book is a Sapphic romance. Both Mina and the witch are outsiders who fall outside of or actively shun conventional expectations that are placed on women within the time period in which this book is set. Classic dyke vibes. Mina is also tainted by her associations with the witch, which does have connotations to homosexuality, and I thought it was really interesting that you could deconstruct the book through a lesbian lens alongside one of grief. So, Mina and the witch. I found the relationship between Mina and the witch to be very, very interesting, but I was left wanting more of it. And I would say their relationship is the one area of this book which could have been improved. Mina and the witch have a very slow burn, enemies to lovers relationship, which is just intoxicating to read about. Very alluring. I was frustrated that the book didn't seem to really fully explore their time in the castle together, and the author seemed to either keep them at a distance from one another for a significant chunk of the book, or would just tell the reader that weeks had passed within a period of time where their relationship was clearly intensifying. And I felt like more of the book could have been dedicated to portraying that time in which the relationship was building, in which the relationship was becoming very intense. Because it felt like, to me, we were just checking in on them every now and then. That said, the few moments we do get between Mina and the witch in the book are really captivating and beautifully written. Their connection to one another is so profound and unique, and you can feel how palpable the tension is between them and how palpable their interactions are through the pages. The intensity of their relationship stems from the fact that it's a life raft in a sea of loneliness that they're both trying not to drown in. It's almost like they have a primal need for each other. I mean, at its core, Bitterthorn is an exploration of loneliness. It explores how that loneliness can occur even when you're surrounded by other people. And the magic of this book is in its vulnerability. It's really not afraid to explore the gritty, uncomfortable, embarrassing truth about human need for connection. And it's so close to the bone that it really stays with you even after you've finished reading it. Now, I do have criticisms for this book. I do. Firstly, I was sometimes frustrated by Mina's attitude towards the witch. At times it felt out of character or just straight up didn't make any sense. For example, one minute she's this meek, passive type who's quaking in her boots around the witch, and then the next minute she's just poking the bear with reckless abandon. And at times she'd go back and forth between these two modes, and it just felt like whiplash sometimes instead of a slow, steady build from one mode to the other. I also really don't understand why Mina reacted in the way that she did when she found out the truth about what had happened to the previous companions and their relationship to the spindle. Even if the link wasn't fairly obvious after she had seen the spindle for herself, what did she think had happened to these companions? Just why would you act like the witch having this dark secret and having done something terrible was brand new information? Even if she was a bit naive, it's kind of ridiculous. The other area of this book which really irked me was Frida somehow finding the castle when it had previously been stated that the castle couldn't be found by anybody the witch didn't want there. There was no real explanation given to how Frida magically bypassed this rule. And the reason this irks me so much is because at the beginning of the book, we're introduced to the fact that the witch comes down every 50 years or so and claims a victim. And of course that begs the question, why has an angry mob never tried to get in the castle and kill her? And then it's explained that they haven't done that because some kind of magic is keeping them out of the castle or keeping them from actually reaching the castle, which is fine, but then Frida somehow randomly with no explanation just breaks that rule. Like, I know Frida was just used to push the story forward and maybe it's not that deep, but it just really irked me that the author had created this rule and then just broken it with no explanation whatsoever. Of course, this book has elements of magic. I'm willing to take it with a pinch of salt, but there's a line. I also have questions about the witch's vague magical powers. For example, when Frida sets fire to the staircase, the witch doesn't use any kind of magic to try and put it out. She can survive freezing cold temperatures, she can spin and loop time, she can apparently make a castle unreachable but not really, but at the same time kind of. But she can't put a fire out. I don't mind some mystery, but I think it was just a little bit too vague. All of that said, I was very touched by this book, and I did get slightly emotional when reading the ending. True love conquers all fairy tale ending. And I think I got emotional because it's a sapphic romance. All the books I would read growing up were about prince and princesses, you know? So when I read the ending, I was definitely in my feelings. I was just like, oh, this is what it feels like. It feels tingly and magical, and I have a sense of hope about love and the world. I can connect to it personally. I mean, it breeds false expectations, but still, it's nice to pretend. The last thing I want to say about this book is it is a woman's book through and through. Most women will either recognize themselves in this book or they will recognize other women in this book, particularly sapphic women. I mean, there were just points in this book where I felt personally attacked because I was like, that's how it is as a woman. I'm feeling it now, Mr. Krabs. Yeah. Overall, Bitterthorn is absolutely worth reading, and it really is one of those books that will stay with you after you've finished reading it. I think about this book all the time. There's something about it. The writing really is beautiful, and I think it lives up to the hype. Mostly. I think if the book had not skipped over so much of the time that Mina and the witch spent together, and it had been slightly more adult, because I have quite adult tastes, this book could have easily been one of my favourite books ever. It's a 4 out of 5 star situation for me personally. Maybe a 4.5. Okay guys, if you've read Bitterthorn, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments section below. If you want to support lesbian content and women's voices, oh god, that's a sound clip. Oh no. Come and join the Sapphic Underground Club. Just come and join it. It's pretty much just like a monthly tip for the content that I put out. I'm like a street jester in Paris many years ago, and the church hates me. Tip me and anger the church. Don't forget to subscribe for instant disappointment. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye.